Hi, my name is Ashley, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make caramel, which relies on the Maillard reaction. Here's a general overview of the procedure for this reaction. There's only 5 ingredients in this recipe, and the main two that are actually going to be going through the reaction are the granulated sugar and the heavy whipping cream. So here's the mechanism for this reaction, where you can see that the amino acid from the protein that's in the heavy whipping cream reacts with the sugar, which is the white granulated sugar. So the amino acid is going to be our nucleophile, and the lone pair on the nitrogen in the nucleophile is going to be attacking the carbonyl carbon, which is from the sugar. So that forms a tetrahedral intermediate, and the nitrogen has a hydrogen attached to it that will protonate the oxygen, so that the oxygen and hydrogen together form a better leaving group, and a double bond is going to form between the carbon and nitrogen. And after a few dehydration reactions, the compound is going to go through an intramolecular reaction to form a ring. And the ring is known as a melanoidin. And so a melanoidin is the final product of the Maillard reaction. And it actually gives the caramel its brown color that signifies that the reaction has been completed. After the stove was heated to medium heat, 1 cup of granulated white sugar, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 cup of water were added to the pan. These first few ingredients added to the pan are not represented in the mechanism because they are done in order to dissolve the sugar in the water to form an aqueous solution so that the sugar can eventually react with the protein. It can be seen that water is a good solvent for the sugar, as water is known to be a universal solvent, but in this case the sugar does not dissolve immediately, but it does start to dissolve, so water is a good solvent. After adding those first ingredients to the pan, the next step, the third step in this reaction, is to continue stirring the solution. And the purpose to doing that is because sugar will burn easily once it's dissolved into the solution, so mixing it prevents it from burning, and it also speeds up the time of the reaction by evenly distributing the sugar. The sugar is now completely dissolved, so I'm going to turn up the heat on the stove to high. And the next step, which is the fourth step in the reaction, is to observe the solution for 4 to 5 minutes and to watch for a golden brown color. So this part of the video will be sped up. So now that the solution is sitting without being stirred, you can see that brown colors around the edges begin to be formed. And so one of the ways that the yield and efficiency of this reaction could have been improved would be by using a smaller pot, because the edges of the sugar started to burn first, which also likely decreased the overall yield of this reaction. The solution continues to get more brown, as you can see, and so when it eventually darkens, the next step of this reaction is to add in a 1/3 cup of heavy whipping cream and 4 tablespoons of butter, which has to be done immediately because there's a high risk that the caramel will burn. Ideally, you would want to see that your solution is an even brown color. So I moved the pan around a little bit to try and distribute that color better, but I will be adding in the heavy whipping cream and the butter shortly to avoid burning the sugar. As you can see, it's getting more and more dark around the edges. And this next part that you're going to see is when the real mechanism is going to be occurring, because the heavy whipping cream has the protein in it, and this sugar that's been dissolved in aqueous solution has the carbonyl carbon that the protein or the amino acid in the protein will attack. So once the heavy whipping cream is added, you can see that a light brown color immediately forms. And by mixing the solution, this color is going to be distributed evenly because the protein is being interacted with the sugar. Now that the whole solution has an even brown color, we can say that the Maillard reaction has occurred. So overall, the amino acid from the protein in the heavy whipping cream has interacted with the sugar from the granulated white sugar. And so a melanoidin has been formed, which is giving this caramel its brown color. And therefore, the reaction to form caramel has been successful. And the final step in this reaction, which is the fifth step, is to let the reaction cool. So I've removed the heat source from the pan, which has already helped, and the heavy whipping cream and the butter that were added are also colder, so they're lowering the temperature of the caramel. But after this butter has completely dissolved, it will be removed from heat, which will help the caramel solidify slightly more as it is liquid right now. So here is the final product of this reaction, and as you can tell, it has solidified since it was finished stirring. So that's the end of this recipe. In these two pictures, you can really see the difference between the color in the starting reagents and the final product. Thank you so much for watching.